This is Immersion Seeds Ag Weather Weekly Weather Briefing. I'm John Felt, February 10th, 2019. Lots of weather going on across the country. It looks like this week we're going to have a variety of winter weather over the northern Corn Belt, heavy snow, parts of the eastern Corn Belt, very heavy rain. And we'll be talking a lot about a persistent cold pattern that could extend over parts of the Corn Belt well into February, if not into even March. So let's get started. So the jet stream right now is in an amplified pattern. What we have is a dip in the jet stream over the western U.S., cold air behind sinking south in this trough here. Then we have a ridge of high pressure in the east, and that's bringing some milder air up finally over parts of the eastern U.S. But when we get an amplified pattern, it's also often a battle between this cold air and the warm air. We also have energy in this jet stream, so each one of these little pockets of energy here are going to produce precipitation along that boundary. Wanted to show you here the thermodynamics are the changes in the surface temperatures here, and areas in red are a 24-hour change of as much as 12 to 15 degrees, if not more, warmer than a day ago. So you can see that the atmosphere is changing fairly rapidly with some milder air, but it's not going to last, and I'll be talking about that a lot in the briefing. Now, in addition to temperature or thermodynamics, we also have moisture. Wanted to show you a moisture channel image here. This is showing Pacific moisture that's flowing into the middle U.S. ahead of a system. And when we get this Pacific moisture, that sort of loads the atmosphere, not just at the Earth's surface, but all the way up, and that's an indicator of heavy rainfall. Now, I mentioned last week the heavy snow. Seattle and parts of the Pacific Northwest definitely received a very heavy snow, over 8 inches in many spots. We also had very heavy snow over the Sierras. We put out something last week on the water supply. We're looking much better here. It was actually near normal last week. It's probably above normal at the current time. And then over the upper Midwest, we also have some snow accumulation in that area as well. So what we have on the ground here, the areas in the sort of the medium shade purple is where it's more significant snowfall, generally above 8 inches. You can see over the upper Midwest, parts of the western U.S. and parts of the northeast U.S. One of the things that I'm going to sort of on my mind and we have to start to talk about a bit is the water equivalent here. Especially, you're going to hear this briefing, I'm going to be talking about a cold pattern in this area. That's going to keep that snow on the ground, and this is right now we're over 2 inches and in some cases over 4 inches of liquid water equivalent. So let's keep an eye on that. As in respect to spring flooding, I'll be starting up some discussion on that on my post very soon, but I did want to mention that we are beginning to build up a fairly sizable water equivalent over the upper Midwest. Now, further to the south, the rivers are very active in the area of heavy rain over the last week. You can see tributaries in Illinois and Indiana are running at moderate. We have some ice action further north on areas that have been frozen as they begin to warm up. And then this flood wave's coming down the lower Ohio into the middle Mississippi at the current time. Wanted to show you also we have a very large area of above normal stream flow right now. And just sort of, I'm giving you some of my thoughts on spring flooding here, and I want to put a lot more comprehensive detail on that in the near future. But keep in mind the water equivalents are up in this area. We have high stream flow in this area, so we do have certainly a couple vulnerability factors going on at the current time. So the departure from normal over the last week, we had cold weather over the Pacific Northwest and the upper plains, warm weather down in this area, and we had this boundary. That's that boundary with the dip in the jet stream here and the ridge in the jet stream here. And right along this boundary between those two air masses is where the action was, and we had our heavy precipitation. So what does the Arctic Oscillation tell us? Well, I wanted to show you here that we're in this pattern here where we've exited the extremely cold air. We're getting into a milder pattern, but it looks like that's going to be somewhat short-lived, and then we're going to get in more uncertainty as we get into the end of February, and we'll probably be transitioning once again. Now, if we look at the jet stream for the next 14 days, what do we see here? Well, one of the things we see, let's sort of focus on the blue here. Blue is a dip in the jet stream, unusually farther south than normal. And look where that remains anchored. So over the parts of the Pacific Northwest, the upper Midwest, perhaps the Great Lakes, up northern plains, it's going to continue to be unusually cold and harsh winter in those areas. Over the far southeast U.S. and Florida, look at the areas in brown, jet stream further north than normal, and that looks like that is going to be unusually mild. In between there is where we're going to have the transition, and that's where most of our action will occur as far as weather. Wanted to show you the cold air. Look how it sort of sits up in this area here, but right in this region right here. Unusually cold air right for the next 14 days. There are signs from the models that show as we get into weeks 3 and 4 that it begins to expand. So don't think that winter is over yet over areas further south, because it does look like it could be expanding late in February and early March. But closer in this week, we are going to be looking at this system right here. This will be the weather maker this week. It looks like a very wet system producing heavy rain. We also are going to have more systems pushing in the Pacific Northwest, so more wintry weather in this area, snow, and also some freezing rain. So it looks like the areas we're going to need to watch are the middle part of the U.S. again, the Ohio River Valley, parts of the southeast, Great Lakes, and then also Pacific Northwest. And you can see that as far as precipitation goes, I think the heaviest precipitation is going to be right in this axis, right in here. It's going to extend into parts of the southeast U.S. and then up the east coast. And then also the far western U.S., very heavy rain again. I need to revisit this. I've got so much content to put out here, so many things going on right now, but we're really adding up the snowpack here in the Sierras. But the western U.S. looks active, and then the eastern U.S. this week. So a very busy week as far as precipitation. One of the things that I look at is the potential for enhanced precipitation. This is where runoff could be very significant, and this is this area in yellow. And sort of looking at some of the rivers here in a multi-model that NOAA runs that puts all the precipitation in there, and it just shows some purple in there. So it's saying that some tributaries we could be actually getting up into major flooding. And on the main stem river, Ohio and the middle Mississippi, minor to moderate. As far as snow goes, this is the snowfall for the next 5 days. Again, I'm a bit concerned with a cold pattern getting into late February with more snow in this region, but it does look like over parts of the upper Midwest, Great Lakes, heavy snow this week as well. Okay, now we look at the 6 to 10 day and then 8 to 14, you can see lots of cold air in that area. I think I've already mentioned that. And also, right along this transition here, perhaps continued busy as far as precipitation. Again, pointing out the transition from week 2 to weeks 3 and 4. Look at the way through weeks 3 and 4 do show some expansion of cold air. We'll have to see how that works out. Also, I wanted to point out that this is the 15th percentile of cold air, so it's showing that not only is our air going to be below normal, but in some areas, especially right in here, it's going to be significantly below normal as we go in the next couple weeks. So in summary, a lot of weather impacts this week, from much below normal temperatures, heavy snow, heavy rain, and a mix of freezing precipitation, a wintry mix in between. So a little bit of weather, types of weather for just about everybody as we go through a very active week.